Solitude is not loneliness. For certain people, it is something completely different. It is a calculated defense mechanism. When your brain operates at a high level, superficial social scripts become an expensive tax on your mental energy. And if you have spent your life being told there's something wrong with you for preferring your own company over hollow connections, then this explainer is going to be the first time someone finally tells you the truth. There's nothing wrong with you. You are simply protecting something most people around you do not even know exists. Today, we're breaking down the exact science behind this, validating a reality you have likely lived with your entire life but never quite had the vocabulary to fully articulate.
Section 1. Amplified social noise. So think about the social noise you experience every single day. I mean, it's that constant stream of unoriginal conversation, the recycled opinions you've heard repeated verbatim 1,000 times, the performative emotion, and just the low-stakes drama that fills ordinary social interaction. Now, for the vast majority of the population, this noise is simply the normal, comforting texture of human connection. It's the background hum of how they relate to one another. But if you have a highly intelligent, high-functioning mind, well, you don't experience this as a warm connection at all. Instead, it feels like a relentless, exhausting stream of background data arriving at a significantly higher and honestly, incredibly overwhelming intensity.
There is a really stark contrast here between the average experience and the high-functioning one. What most people consider the normal texture of everyday life actually acts as genuine cognitive interference for a highly analytical mind. The crucial point here, and this is absolutely fascinating, is that the exact same mental architecture that allows you to engage in complex thinking, deep pattern recognition, and rapid analysis actually makes irrelevant, unoriginal information significantly more difficult to filter out. It's like your brain is a high-powered engine designed to process data, so when you're sitting in a room surrounded by trivial conversation, your brain doesn't just switch off. No, it attempts to analyze and categorize that low-quality input at maximum speed. You aren't just feeling bored in a social environment. Your brain is actively working much, much harder than it should be on content that produces absolutely nothing of value.
Section 2. The cost of the mask and zero-sum bandwidth.
You've likely experienced this process without ever giving it a formal name. In almost every standard social setting, you run through a highly specific, kind of exhausting checklist. First, you modulate your vocabulary so you don't come across as overly intense or academic. Second, you actively restrict your references, holding back that perfect analogy because it'll just require a lengthy explanation that derails the entire conversation. And third, you construct a simplified version of yourself that is broadly acceptable to the room. For most people, this social modulation is minor and largely unconscious. But if you think and communicate at a significantly different frequency than the majority of people around you, this process requires immense effort. You aren't just adjusting your tone slightly to be polite. You are performing a continuous, physically exhausting construction of a lesser, simplified version of yourself. Maintaining that mask across an evening out or a full day at the office is genuinely draining, and the people around you will never fully understand it, mostly because their brains simply aren't doing the same amount of heavy lifting.
When we look at how our daily mental bandwidth is actually distributed, we realize that for a high-functioning mind, people-pleasing is literally a zero-sum exchange. Your cognitive energy is a strictly finite resource. Every single unit of energy you spend managing other people's comfort, navigating their social expectations, or performing a connection that just doesn't feel genuine steals directly from your capacity for complex thinking and creating. It's a direct withdrawal from your most valuable account. So it is not selfishness to want to avoid this rapid depletion. It is strict, necessary resource management. You've basically discovered through repeated experience that your internal environment, the quality of your own thinking when left entirely uninterrupted, is your most productive and deeply satisfying state. So it is not selfishness to want to avoid this rapid depletion. It is strict, necessary resource management. You've basically discovered through repeated experience that your internal environment, the quality of your own thinking when left entirely uninterrupted, is your most productive and deeply satisfying state.
Section 3, Parasitic Friendships and the Mental Residue Effects. So what is mental residue? Well, it's the lingering cognitive tax of a draining social interaction. For an average person, an uneven parasitic friendship where everything happens on the other person's terms is, annoying, but it's relatively tolerable. They can leave the coffee shop and just move on with their day. But for a high-functioning person, it is a direct disruption to the internal clarity your complex thinking absolutely requires. This exhaustion you feel is actually a heavily documented phenomenon.
You're dealing with the replaying of conversations in your head, the frustrating processing of all those thoughts you had to leave unexpressed just to keep the peace, and a low-grade irritation that continues to interrupt the quality of your focus for hours, sometimes even days, after the physical interaction has actually ended. It is quite literally a cognitive hangover.
Section 4. The quality threshold.
Society constantly assumes that if you're highly selective with your time and your energy, you're elitist, which is entirely misread as arrogance. The assumption is that you think you're better than everyone else, or that you're just looking for exact clones of yourself to echo your own thoughts back to you. But the reality of intelligence is quite different and beautifully nuanced. You aren't being arrogant. You're simply looking for people around whom you don't have to become smaller to be acceptable. You're looking for an environment where you can finally take the mask off, where you aren't forced to shrink your vocabulary, your references, or your genuine curiosity just to make the interaction function. Let's slow down for a second and deeply consider what a high-functioning baseline actually looks and feels like. It's characterized by conversations that go to unexpected, truly fascinating places. It's the experience of being around someone who actively pushes your thinking forward, rather than entirely consuming your energy reserves. It provides genuine, reciprocal nourishment, like you walk away from the interaction feeling more energized, more inspired, and sharper than when you entered it. For a high-functioning person, this isn't a luxury. It isn't some impossibly high, snooty standard that you hold over people's heads. This is just the fundamental baseline of what actual connection should feel like. And when it's absent, when the environment only offers superficial noise, the alternative of solitude simply becomes the much healthier, way more logical choice. So a really pivotal question arises. Is choosing solitude a failure of social development? Because if you've spent a lifetime preferring your own company, avoiding large gatherings, and carefully curating your small circle, you've likely internalized a massive amount of guilt over this. Friends, family members, and society at large are constantly telling you to put yourself out there more, subtly implying that your withdrawal is a flaw you somehow need to fix. Well, the definitive answer to that question is no. Choosing solitude over fake connection is not a failure. It's the mature recognition that your internal environment has genuine limits and a measurable, genuine value. You aren't being antisocial or broken. You are actively and necessarily protecting your most valuable asset, your peace, your focus, and your intellectual bandwidth. There is a massive disconnect between society's expectations and your neurological needs. You've undoubtedly heard the well-meaning advice to get out more or to not be so selective. And to be fair, the people who have judged you and told you this are not wrong to value connection. Connection is vital. But the neurological reality they completely fail to grasp is that true connection and mere physical presence in the same room are not the same thing. Being surrounded by people while feeling entirely misunderstood or unable to be your authentic self is infinitely more isolating than sitting alone in a quiet room. Section 5. Refusing the substitute. So the next time you feel the urge to decline an invitation to protect your peace, ask yourself, are you actually missing out, or are you finally just protecting your greatest asset? Because the truth is this, real connection is worth everything. The performance of it is worth nothing. And knowing the difference and having the discipline to refuse the substitute is one of the clearest signs of a mind that knows exactly what it is worth.